It's the same thing that annoys me where Democrats are only immigration activists when a Republican is in charge. But the reason why this midterm is going to be a complete shit show is because historically, usually the party
Yes.
that is in the minority is usually the one who's benefiting, Shama.
Yeah, I know. I was just thinking that, and I forgot to say that. I'm so glad you mentioned that. Yes,
Yeah.
usually it is the other way around. And as you said, it's really not. We have neither party is for the working class, so both parties are hated. So it's really a contest of who's hated the least. And typically, if it's a Democratic president, it's easier to hate the Republicans a little bit less because, in the most immediate sense, it is the Democratic president who's responsible for.
This is what I support. Because I said I unapologetically support third parties as a mechanism for change. And this time right now, we need an anti-Zionist, very, very strong anti-Zionist third party to challenge the Zionist-controlled duopoly. But before we get started, I did a hotspot on this. And I want you to speak about the race and in the current state of the Democratic Party, because despite how unpopular Donald Trump isn't helping Democrats. The Democratic Party faces a voter registration crisis. The party is bleeding support beyond the ballot bots, a new analysis shows. And just like I said, my hotspot, it's almost like supporting genocide is political suicide. So, Sean, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it's really stunning that Trump is actually facing so many crises of his own. His tariff policy, his immigration policy are both extremely unpopular. He has carried out just untold brutal attacks on working class people through the so-called big beautiful bill, not to mention the the combined $1 trillion cut that it will land on Medicare, Medicaid, and food assistance. These three programs are extremely popular among the overwhelming majority of American working people, which includes whopping huge majorities of Republican voters, habitual Republican voters. Over 90% of America supports Medicare, Medicaid, and food assistance. And yet you have Trump and the Republicans attacking them. And in this context, for the Democratic Party to be hemorrhaging support, that takes some doing. That is that is a story about the Democratic Party. That is a story about the Democratic and Republican parties together. That is the story about capitalism and why the working class cannot have any faith in either of these two parties. But just quickly, Nick, I think it's really useful to look at the statistics here because they are just staggering. This is what the New York Times, one of the headlines you shared in a second ago. This is from the New York Times. They say, and the word hemorrhaging is from the New York Times. It's a quote that the Democratic Party is hemorrhaging voters long before they even go to the polls. And here's the telling statistic. Of the 30 states that track voter registration by political party, Democrats lost ground to Republicans in every single one between the 2020 and 2024 elections, and often by a lot. That 4-year swing towards the Republicans adds up to 4.5 million voters, a deep political hole that could take years for Democrats to climb out from. And in the next paragraph, I'm not going to read the whole article, but in the next paragraph, they use another word, which is also telling, is that it's a stampede away from the Democratic Party. And it's particularly occurring in the battleground states. So I think for the working class, this is not that we should have faith in the Republican Party or Trump. Obviously, Trump is, completely an enemy of the working class. He also serves the billionaire class. But the story here is that most of the working class understands that the Democratic Party also serves the working class. Serves the billionaire class. The Democratic Party is also a warmongering party. And might I say also, just in reminder to everyone, that out of the 22 months that the genocide in Gaza has been going on, 15 of those 22 months were under a Biden presidency.
Exactly.
And it was cheer-led. That then genocide has been cheer-led by the Democratic Party. So these are the two parties, this is the story, and that is why if we want to win any of our demands as a working class, if we want to change society for the better, there is no alternative but to build movements that are completely independent of both parties, and we need a new party for the working class itself.
Yeah, these midterms are going to be a complete shit show. Like, our politics is essentially a race to the bottom. The ruling class competes with them to see who's the least unpopular. That's essentially what this midterm is going to come down to.
Yes.
And every single midterm goes down to that. Every single United States election is not about let's elect the most liked politician. It's who's the least disliked.
And you know what? I think it's even more for a lot of people. It's like who's the least hated, because people correctly hate both the Democrats and Republicans. I mean, the people hate these politicians, and as Chris Hedges correctly said, these are careerists. And working class people are not stupid. You don't need a degree in political science to understand that these politicians are careerist politicians, and they do not have your interest at heart. They are just looking to maneuver in the most convenient way possible in a system that is dominated by the billionaires and the multimillionaires, the corporate lobbyists, the Zionist lobby, and so on. And so, there you go. You have a Democratic Party, which is very similar to the Republican Party, except in certain rhetorical questions. But if you look at the essence of what they do, is very much similar. I mean, like if you look at the question of deportations and the ICE raids and all that, the Democratic Party, I believe only 9 of all the Democrats in the US Senate and House, they voted against the George W. Bush Homeland Security Act back in 2002, which created ICE. So for the immigrant community and for anti-war activists who are being targeted by ICE, by Trump's ICE, that space for Trump to be emboldened to carry out these brutal attacks using ICE raids, that space has been laid bare open by the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. So, Adam Smith, the Congress member I'm running against, Senator Maria Cantwell, Senator Patty Murray, the 2 Democratic senators of Washington State, they all 3 of them voted for the Homeland Security Act. They voted to create ICE, and all 3 of them voted to send tens of billions of dollars for the genocide in Gaza.
People don't remember. I covered the entirety of the Biden administration, including his immigration record. You guys know that detainees under Joe Biden's ICE was going on hunger strikes because conditions were so bad. They were denied medical care. There was massive amount of reports of sexual assaults. And there was ICE raids during the Biden administration, including children being deported with their parents. In fact, the Barack Obama is the president who deported the most American children using the same policies that liberals now care about that Donald Trump is using. It's the same thing that annoys me, where Democrats are only immigration activists when a Republican is in charge. But the reason why this midterm is going to be a complete shit show is because historically, usually the party that is in the minority is usually the one who's benefiting, Kshama.
Yeah, I know. I was just thinking that, and I forgot to say that. I'm so glad you mentioned that. Yes, usually it is the other way around. And as you said, it's really not. We have neither party is for the working class, so both parties are hated. So it's really a contest of who's hated the least. And typically, if it's a Democratic president, it's easier to hate the Republicans a little bit less, because, in the most immediate sense, it is the Democratic president who's responsible for all the bad things that are happening to the working class, and vice versa. And so, like, for example, the rise of the Tea Party in the midterms after Obama was elected reflected all the anger at the Democratic Party. But now the Democratic Party is so exposed. It is so exposed in the eyes of tens of millions of American working people that not only is it that the Democrats are becoming more unpopular with every passing day in the presence of a Republican presidency, they are also becoming more unpopular by the day in the presence of a Republican president like Trump, who is also a complete shit show, and people hate him as well. And so to be winning the unpopularity race against Trump and the Republicans, my God.
And imagine trying to rehabilitate this party, Kshama, because you guys see where I'm going with this. Imagine having this dead party. This is a situation of a lifetime where you have a dying wing of the duopoly and a record amount of Americans who want a third party. You have two very important data points that points to a very clear direction for the left. And meanwhile, they're not taking it. So as we were describing how the Democratic Party is dying, let me read this headline. I'll show you guys the next headline. More Republicans registered to vote than Democrats in 2020 and 2024. You have more Democrats who are bleeding voter registration for the upcoming midterms. And this data has the establishment completely panicked. And what we should be doing as revolutionaries, as socialists, is whenever the pendulum predictably swings, because the ruling class purposely screws the American worker, knowing that they have a cushion. They have a safety cushion that the other side of the duopoly will pick it up, and then they will crash the pendulum. You go back from Democrat to Republican, Democrat to Republican. So it is our job to grab people as they are falling off the pendulum and lead them to the correct direction by appealing to their material interests. What we should not be doing, and this is the strategy of the United States left, and this is why I really want to dive into this article. What we should not be doing as people are falling off this pendulum I'm describing, what I believe we should take those people and move them to our position. What the DSA left, what they are arguing is that as people are falling off that pendulum, we should help them back up. So as we have 88 million Americans who are not voting, and I'm talking about registered voters, who are not voting for the Democrat or Republican Party. I repeat, 88 million. But you have the dumb left who is actively trying to rehabilitate this party. And I wanted to get your thoughts on this because Jacobin does it again. Ever since the October 7th and the genocide of the Palestinian people, there have been a lot of confusion on the left because it's easy to get genocide right. Because a lot of people see people speaking out for Palestinians, so they assume they're based. So there are a lot of like new people in politics who realize that a lot of these papers, like if you look at Jacobin on Israel, you won't find many bad things from it. You know what I mean? They're good on calling out genocide, but people are realizing that, oh, so you are able to acknowledge that the Democratic Party is committing a genocide, but you want to run in said party? Look at this headline. And I want to give you a lot of time to cook on this, because you wrote an amazing thread on this. Look at the title. Like it or not, if we run third party, we lose. Hold up. Look at the perspective. We lose? Will you describe yourself as winning right now? Will you describe the state of the United States left for the last few decades as winning? So the reason why they view it as winning because they're winning in their career. Because what have you accomplished for the working class? What have the United States establishment left accomplished that makes them so smug and makes them feel like they are winners? Because they stay in proximity of neoliberals who actually do have power. So, all right, I thought shut up. Kshama, I want to hear from you. I don't want to take all the arguments first. I'll pass to you because I know you got a lot to say on this article. Your thread was great on this. I was very excited talking about this article. We're going to read just a little bit of it, but what's your initial thoughts?
Oh, yeah. And yeah, absolutely. Everything you said is extremely important. I just wanted to also point out, by the way, Nick, as we know, this article is actually from 5 years ago.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
So
they're still publishing it?
No, this was published on, I mean, it was.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
As I said in my tweet thread, this take was garbage 5 years ago. But what happened is that Jacobin tweeted this article out last week.
That's why I got tricked. I thought they just put. Yeah, what? Why are they tweeting this out?
See,
that's crazy.
That's the thing. That's
why I was tricked.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And that's what I said in my tweet that this idea that if we run third party, we will lose. Who's the we? I mean, the working class will not lose if we run third party. That is exactly what we need to do. But the point is that this idea that we cannot abandon the Democratic Party, we as the working class, that idea was garbage 5 years ago, and it's
Yeah.
toxic waste today, is what I said. And it was stunning. I'm not surprised, but it was stunning that Jacobin would reshare that article. Why share that article right now?
Exactly.
What point are you trying to make, right? So it's like you were saying, it's they're trying to these people are careerists, and they're trying to get people back into the Democratic Party.
And I take over. That happens to me too. I'll take over for a quick second. They work backwards from the conclusion. This is what I meant when I was discussing the conversation with Cornel West on a few issues. They work backwards from their conclusion in order to justify their positions they take to protect their social standing. People do this all the time. So they're like, oh, well, don't you know the socialist position to support the Democratic Party? And surely I'm not saying this because I want to be part of the DNC committee. Like, they do this. It's the professional managerial class gaslighting. I'll read the first paragraph and I'll pass it back to you, Kshama. Socialists say they either want to realign the Democratic Party or break it entirely. But those aren't political strategies. They are outcomes of political struggle. We need a way to develop working class politics without condemning ourselves to third-party marginality. So this is someone who wants to be part of the club. Because historically, and I'll pass to you after this point, Kshama, give me an example of your strategy working. You guys see the smugness of the professional managerial class left, who I don't want to be a part of? It's always when people give me grifting advice. They're like, Nick, stop going after these people. Don't you want access to them? No. I don't want to be around these people. I don't want to be a part of them. They have this fantasy, this smug fantasy that they are tacticians, but they are not selling out morally, Kshama. They're playing a chess. They're playing 3D chess. But my question to these people who believe they are successful when they are not is, what exactly have you accomplished for the working class? Ever since your guys' strategy of infiltrating the Democratic Party, the Democratic Party has shifted to the right. Medicare for all is dead. Student loan forgiveness is dead. All the moderate progressive policies that you guys ran for is dead. Not only are they dead, what you get out of it was a genocide. So, Kshama, we would be in a tough position right now if these people was like, hey, man, we got Medicare for all passed. You see how we got a living wage passed? Nigga, you got no student loan debt. Our back will be against the wall making the argument against these people if they actually have something to show us, but they have nothing to show us, and they still act smugnorant.
Absolutely smugnorant. Yes, that's exactly what they're doing. And just to give some specifics as to what you're referring to, which is that they have nothing to show for themselves to prove that their analysis is correct, is look at the simple facts. As you said, Medicare for all is completely dead as far as the Democratic Party is concerned. Like, if that's the avenue you're picking, then it's a dead end strategy. Even look at something as simple as the $15 minimum wage, which was a demand that came from 13 to 15 years ago. The federal minimum wage is still at $7.25. And let's not forget, Nick, that the federal minimum wage for tipped workers is $2.13. I mean, this is from the feudal era. This is some feudal era shit. And this is at the doorstep of AOC, Bernie Sanders, and the the labor leadership, and of course the leadership of the liberal NGOs. But I specifically wanted to put a fine point on the labor leadership because the author of this article that Jacobin chose to share, this 5-year-old article that Jacobin chose to share a tweet about, is a leader in the Teamster Union. And this is so the labor leadership has been absolutely abysmal for the last 30 years because they have been and are tied at the hip to the Democratic Party. But what's even more astounding, Nick, about this is that the author of this article is a leader in the Teamsters Union, the leadership of which union has been moving towards Trump. So not only have they been towing the Democratic Party line, they've gone beyond that, and they've gone over to the right wing. And Sean O'Brien, the president of the Teamsters, spoke at the Republican National Convention and gushed over Donald Trump and Senator Josh Hawley, absolutely horrific right
These are our
wingers
labor
who are
leaders.
they are anti-worker and anti-union as they come. These are deep reactionary anti-worker politicians, and you have this prominent union leader. Teamsters is one of the biggest, most important unions in the United States. The leader of the Teamsters goes and speaks at the RNC. So this is the moral and political bankruptcy of most of the labor leadership. You either have the vast majority of the leadership kowtowing to the Democratic Party, or you have some leaders like Sean O'Brien going even worse than that, and then kissing up to Donald Trump and the Republicans and the right wing. This is an absolute dead end for the working class, and it also, it is also very much tied with business unionism. I've referred to that a couple of times on our shows, that what business unionism is the idea that for the labor leaders who think that who see their role not as leading the working class in a class battle against the bosses, but trying to manage the boss's greed and the interests of the working class, and trying to eke out crumbs while keeping the peace with the bosses. That is directly related to also keeping the peace with the bosses' parties, which are the Democrats and the
Yes.
Republicans. And so for us, and this goes to the heart of the topic of the show that you outlined, Nick, which is that if we are to have militant worker organizing, whether inside the unions or just overall social organizing, militant organizing on the streets, whether it is to end deportations or to end the genocide or for workers' rights, that militant organizing strategy, integral to that militant organizing strategy, is a break from the Democratic and Republican parties, because you cannot possibly organize against the bosses if you are tied to the bosses' parties, if your leadership is tied to the bosses' parties. And this is the seemingly eternal selling out by the labor leaders, by the NGO leaders. And I wanted to also highlight, I agree with you, Nick, when you said that a lot of these people on the left, the Jacobin and so on, they're good on calling the genocide. That's true. But at the same time, they don't actually say, well, the Democrats are just as responsible. And in fact, 15 of the 22 the first 15 months of the 22 months of the genocide happened under Democratic Party leadership. So they have as much of the 500,000 Palestinians' blood on their hands as do the Republicans. They don't say this. They don't say this. They attack us. They attack Marxists for running against the Democratic Party. They attack Marxists for urging the working class to build independent movements. And one of the most important weapons that this is not even the left, I would call it the progressive establishment, really. I think that is a more accurate terminology for the role that is being played by many of the leaders here, like not everyone, but many of the DSA leaders, the leaders of the labor unions. I think they are much more tied to the progressive establishment than to the left. And one of the weapons that they are using, especially against our campaign, for example, is invisibilizing, gatekeeping by invisibilizing. They just pretend it's not happening. They don't talk about it. Jacobin refused to publish the announcement of my campaign against genocidal Democrat Adam Smith.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
They didn't give me a reason, so I'm not a mind reader. But the point is, why would you not publish it? If it's a socialist publication, then how does it make sense? How is it strategic for building movements, for building up the working class confidence? How is it strategic to invisibilize the only, as far as I know, only independent fighting campaign now that is going to be in the midterms next year that actually has a chance to win? How is it strategic for building the movement to do that? And yet they're doing that. And so that is why my appeal is never to these leaders. I don't expect them to change. My appeal, and as is yours, Nick, our appeal is always to working class people, to ordinary people,